Hello, everyone. This is Mark Rhodes. Hey, we're doing a new thing called the NVS Huddle, and I've got 4 fantastic community members, partners, general geniuses with me today to talk about their kind of insights and lessons learned around Business Central. Business Central has been out for a couple of years now, maybe 2.5 years, and it really has gotten to a much more steady state. They've made tremendous improvements with the modern client, the browser interface. A lot more adoption is happening. We're seeing a tremendous amount of volume and interest this year. All the partners in the community are very busy. And I thought it a good time to take a breather and talk about what implementing Business Central is all about. In particular, I think a lot of people had early on this hope that maybe it's going to be a lot easier. Maybe as a customer, I can do a lot more by myself. Maybe it'll be a little bit more wizard driven than the traditional big multi-figure implementation and upgrade projects of the past. And while it is easier and a little bit easier to get your arms around, it's not a QuickBooks. It's not something you can install in a couple hours and be up and running with really any success, certainly if you want to drive some improvement in your company. And really, a lot of this comes from just calls that I've been getting saying, hey, we've been up on Business Central now for a month or two, and we still haven't closed our books. We have shipments we can't track down. We can't get product out the door. Those are scary calls to get. And to talk a little bit more around that point, that the role of the partner, how important it still is to optimize the implementation and your upgrades, and make sure that you really have the system configured to drive your business. So on our panel today, I'm just going to go from left to right. We've got Tom Doran from Innovia Consulting. We've got Eric Hogard from Foqus Canada. We have David Gersten from Dynamic Consulting and Ben Baxter from Accent Software. Hey guys, thanks for joining me today.
Hey Mark.
Hey Mark. Good
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Hey, let's go around the room, do introductions real quick, and then let's go ahead and dive in with some questions. Tom, I'll call on you first since you're in my upper left.
Sure, I'm Tom Doran. I'm with Innovia Consulting. I've been with Innovia for about 13 years, and I've been working with Business Central and its predecessors since 1998.
Fantastic. So you've seen the highs and lows, and you got to be pretty excited about where we're at right now.
You know, I was just telling a joke, but Ben's mom, Julia, once looked at me and said, Tom, can't you just sell a simple project once?
Always the goal. Eric, introduce yourself, please.
I'm Eric, and yeah, I've been with what we now call Business Central since it all started back in Denmark in 1990. At that time, it was an IBM product called Navigator. And I'm currently working in Canada, in Vancouver, a company called eFocus. And I have been receiving the Microsoft MVP awards for quite a few years now. And you might also have stumbled upon my newest endeavor on YouTube, but I usually deal with the development side, but like a year and a half ago, I thought that with the whole change in how software is delivered, how Business Central has changed, we and thereby I mean the customers are actually needing something else. So I spent a lot of time writing the book that sits on my shelf behind me, which is a field guide for people to get started with Business Central, perhaps without a traditional partner, without a traditional project, but certainly as a help to up qualify customers when they're working with a product like this.
Excellent. And let me tell you, folks, it's a pretty thick book, so a lot in there. David?
Hey, Mark, thanks for including me. David Gersten, Dynamic Consulting. I'm the SMB ERP strategic engagement manager for our organization. We've had a mid-market SMB practice for a couple of years now, about 3 years. Traditionally been in the enterprise F&O space, but we saw a great opportunity with legacy GP and NAV customers, as well as the change of the Business Central world. Came on board about a couple of years ago. I've been in the channel about 10 years though, always in GP and Navision space, and real excited. Been involved with Business Central specifically since Chicago 4 years ago when Project Madeira launched, and has really learned a lot on that. I am on the more sales and engagement side of the world, so I could talk about the storytelling and what we talk to customers and the reality of what I see, what our great team does in deploying these solutions and how to sell them and transfer that change that mindset of the customer, because what they are seeing in the marketplace and what Microsoft is telling them compared to reality is a totally different paradigm. So I spend most of my day doing mindset changing, to get them to understand that it is a good project. A good product and a good project. And Eric, I'll tell you, I love your book. I have the PDF version, and I love the updates of it. I mean, I just keep save as every time you give us a new one. And it's appreciate that contribution to the community.
Thanks.
Well said, David. There, you highlighted something I didn't really key on in my opening thoughts. There are a lot of mixed messages out there. We're going to get into that, and that's partly why we're talking today as well. But let's wrap up with intros. Ben?
Yeah, Mark, really appreciate you having me on here. My name is Ben Baxter with Accent Software. We've been doing BC and NAV and Dynamics and Navision way back when, and I've been doing it myself for over 15 years now. Longer than I could imagine I would be doing it, but still love it, still get excited about the product and what it is capable of doing as long as you properly utilize it. So we specialize in manufacturing, job costing, and service, but talk with people in just about every industry.
It's amazing the years of experience we have there, and for anybody who's really newer to the space, maybe just a recent Business Central customer or somebody looking at this software, you'll see this through and through our community. Passionate people who love the software and have been obviously using it and involved with it for decades. It's really impressive, the staying power, and really that speaks volumes, I think. So, okay, let's level set. Business Central, again, been out for 2.5 years now. Predecessor, for all intents and purposes, was Dynamics Nav. It is the same, yet it's not. It was re-architected, very different implementations now, very different structure to all of it. If folks are watching and they're just getting into it, there's a lot of similarities, but yet a lot of differences. If you're running on Nav and looking to upgrade to Business Central, hey, there are a lot of changes to get your arms around. So I'm going to ask the first question to the panel. What are your lessons learned so far implementing Business Central? What do you think? Tom, we'll start with you again.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. And I was thinking about those lessons because there have been many as the product has evolved. But I would say the two biggest lessons, and David touched on it, it's setting the right expectation at the front end of the project to ensure the customer's clear. And the other, because we have such a robust ISV community, is ensuring that whatever ISVs you're considering are in fact ready for the product.
Oh, yeah. So, somebody want to expand on that for a little bit for those who are a little bit more uninitiated? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the ISV point is a good one because it's not just having the product there, but being in a good relationship with that ISV provider. Because if you need to extend it or do something to make it work in a better way for that particular install, you need to be able to work with them, ask them questions, and drill into it. You don't want to just pick one off AppSource because it has a pretty name or something like that. You got to know what you're working with.
Yeah. I'll add to that where there's also a lot of assumptions. So I'll leave the ISV's name out of it, but it was a very interesting learning experience that the product that they have in the Business Central app source and ready for Business Central cloud-based experience, even though they've been in the nav space and the GP space with the same exact product, it was not the same exact product. They launched it so that it was in the space, but really common core functionality that you just think it's the same product, it was missing, and we had to wait until future bugs or updates would happen, and then those go through a long, lengthy process as well, creating a lot of delays. So I think the lesson was, really drill down into that extension or that ISV that you're working with. We like to call them modules in this, in this space. I hate the term ISV because it really hurts us competitively with other products that are out there. It's just an extension to the product. But really make sure, even those that are been out there 15, 20 years, the product is still a new product, and a new code base, and it might be their first rodeo, even though they've been around.
It's Business Central is just the next version of Nav in some way. In other ways, it's a whole new beast, and one of the ways that it's, stop me if I get too technical, because that's what I usually do, but please stop me. But so when we had Nav, a very typical installation would be that you would have a primary ISV, a primary add-on to the system. That ISV had intrusive customizations throughout the system. So the base functionality of Dynamics was changed by that primary ISV you had installed. Then you could have other ISVs that were, more like sitting on the side and not really having a big impact. But you had that one major thing that was kind of the start and that defined your project. With Business Central now, ISV products like that do not longer exist. It's not possible to make that work in the cloud version. And so all the old Nav ISVs who had awesome software, awesome IP, and thousands of customers who loved the product have really been scrambling to figure out how can we provide the same kind of functionality in this new world and being applied to a Business Central that gets updated once a month with new functionality and everything. Because what Microsoft also, I don't know if anybody knows, is that 17.1 was not a CU, cumulative update. It was more features that didn't make it into 17.0, just came in 17.1. So now we have 2 feature updates a month apart. And if your extension, if your add-on is not rock solid and can handle that, then it's going to break. And you thought, okay, I just need to handle the 17.0, then I'm good for another 6 months until breaking change. That's no longer how it works. There will be new stuff added every single month now.
Yeah. And keeping track of all this, when I think of the role of the partner, certainly it's changing. I guess that's a fair way to say it, right? The role of the partner is changing. When I think about the strain on the resellers, the VARs, and the strain on the ISVs and how this has shifted over the past couple of years, one of the things I think about is the complexity of keeping everything in sync, and also the complexity really in licensing and making sure that you have the right licenses for what you're doing at your operations and the right versions for your workers. Key role for the partner, I think, and you guys have probably got some great stories around those items as well as all this shift has taken place.
I think one of the things we saw, because we had been through the the AX to finance and operations switch, and we also had a CRM practice that went from on-premises CRM to D365. The continuous upgrade concept was already we were established. We had that process in place before we took on Business Central. So I think it gave us a small leg up to other partners that had been traditional legacy products and hadn't been used to the, without having the controls that are in place. And now you can still have a little bit more controls, and Microsoft's adding more and more of those controls to managing the upgrade. But I think it comes to a different level of dependency on the customer. We try to talk about the customer after the implementation, that they're going to be independent. They're going to be able to have a lower cost of ongoing support. Although what we do talk about is, both the major wave 1 and wave 2s, but those minors that are coming in that are a bit more bigger than minors, like Eric just said, the .1s, .2s, they're bigger than, you can't control those. You can't test those. You can't control them like you can in the wave 1s and wave 2s, where you can schedule those, you can test it, you can do it in a sandbox. But you have to create a sort of a managed services program around those now, and set that expectation to the customer that you're going to sell a bundle of hours, and these are going to be dedicated to managing those expectations. Now, what's good is we know the base core product is going to work because the code isn't disrupted. Like you said, Eric, in the old days, the ISVs, they disrupted the base code, and you had that to worry about. At least now you've segmented, BC with no extensions will work. Okay, it might not meet their business process, and it might not meet all their requirements. But if you pull the extensions out, most likely the functionality of the solution is going to work at that point. So you have that to fall back on, which you used to never have that to fall back on, at least. But it does change that post-sale, post-live support methodology. And we were already on board with that. We had some of those programs in place, so it was less painful for us.
And I'll jump in here. We've talked a lot about ISVs and add-ons and extensions. Functionally, Business Central is a great product. I would say going from NAV to what we now have in BC with all the connections, BC Cloud, you can still do a lot of the connections with on-prem as well, but I mean, functionally, it is a very strong product. And so you don't have to jump into ISV products like you did in the past. So I just wanted to reference that and make sure people understood it's a very solid product on its own. ISVs are there to fill the functional gaps depending on the industry.
I would oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would say the biggest problem that we encounter on every single customer these days is the lack of bank integration out of the base product. Bank integration is the Achilles heel right now of the Microsoft offering, especially if people come from QuickBooks or something like that, where they open up QuickBooks, they click on the logo for their bank, and then everything is synced and everything just works. And then they come over to BC and we say, yeah, so if we go into the data exchange, we can set up something that's like 85 to 90% of the file format that your bank probably delivers or requires. And then that's right now the place where every single one of our customers go to some sort of app to help, because that's just not good enough at present.
The dependency on Yodlee has been a challenge in even the most recent weeks and months.
And you're in the primary country that Yodlee support.
Right. Which, that's very U.S. centric. Absolutely. And NAV was never U.S. centric. So it's definitely a paradigm shift. Having those conversations, again, that's that change of mindset. It's not just an OBX file or whatever they're called, that QuickBooks has, and explaining that, banks do have different formats, and, but QuickBooks has done that. Is again that mindset. But I agree with Ben.
Yeah.
I like to say it's the best cloud-based solution out there for mid-market in the world. Of all ERP solutions, it's the fastest growing cloud-based ERP solution in history. No other cloud ERP system has as many installs as Business Central has today, based on Microsoft's numbers, in the short amount of time that it's been around. And in my experience, which will defer a lot of, a bunch of your questions are about like NAV to BC. Most of our customers are net new to ERP. They are not coming off the NAVs. They're not coming off the GPs. They are coming off of Mass 90s or, hundreds or Peachtree 50 or, whatever you want to call it, or QuickBooks, but they are not. I'm not seeing a cannibalization of the existing customers. So this is just a whole new process for us, which has been exciting.
And Ben, also, Microsoft continues to invest very heavily in improving the product, right? Each new major release has a ton of new functions and features. So it's very exciting to see that along with the rest of the Microsoft stack. But Tom, you had something else?
No, I mean, I was just going to line up a lot closer to Ben. I'm not certain that, Navision, Nav, Business Central now, ISVs have been part of the solution forever. We've competed effectively. Do we lose some deals here and there? Sure we do. I think it's one of the strongest products I've ever seen with a new release, and I'm really I sell it confidently.
Yeah, exactly. Before we move on, any other gotchas or big lessons learned with your experience with Business Central over the past couple of years?
Setting expectations.
Right.
Expand on that.
So if they look it up online and they watch some videos online, there's a good chance that they watched some ISV's video on YouTube, and they expect the software to do that when they buy it from you. So you need to make sure their mindset aligns with what you're delivering so that everybody's on the same page when you agree to move forward.
And I would add, Microsoft hit us. I mean, I think most of us were in the room 4 years ago with Madeira and Sense, where, Microsoft really painted a picture and went to the market with the picture that you can just deploy this thing. And, we had some people in Denmark helping with the development group, and we're like, okay, show us. You do it. And you should have seen their faces when they tried to do it. They're like, oh, hey, this didn't work the way we thought. We're like, yeah, no kidding. And so just making sure that we help those folks that are coming from QuickBooks. If they're a NAV customer doing an upgrade, no problem. They're already, we're good. But if they're a QuickBooks customer, there is some management that we need to do around helping them understand what it is to be successful. And I call it a failure. It was a lesson. Microsoft said, look, you got to have a low price. You got to have a fixed price. And we did that. We were out with a sub $10,000 fixed fee. We were clear on the scope. What we got were customers that were not happy. They wanted more help than what the scope that we sold them contained. And they didn't care what the scope statement said. What they said was, look, we're not ready. Like, well, so back to setting expectations.
Yeah, you're right. That trying to do that, it's like every day in marketing and sales. I want to sell. I want to make these customers happy that have those low budgets, that have those, that only want to spend the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000. But really, when it comes to what can you deliver for that and what are they going to do, it is really hard to get a happy customer. We get 10 leads a week that are coming in with that expectation, and it's so hard to say no to them or spend all that effort to convert their mindset, because at the end of the day, it's going to be hard for them to be happy. There's we could manage by exception, and there's definitely those that, we provide a coaching model, or we, point them to Eric's book and say, use this and, we'll keep you alive for, a couple hours a week to manage you through it, to make sure you're accountable, like an accountable coach. But that it's either real small, but that middle size that Tom was talking about, that quick peck, that fix thing, we have it out on AppSource also, but it never is sold like that. It's always, you're not going to have a happy customer.
We were having a conversation, and so it's about how complex are your business processes.
Bingo.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, I joke, and Ben will attest to this. I'm not that bright, right? But I figured this stuff out. But it was my job to figure it out. I made it my business to understand what this software does. Now, as a business owner or whoever's in charge of implementing, you had a job before you bought this system, and you're going to have a job tomorrow while you're trying to implement this system. And so who's going to take responsibility for mastering the software? If they're willing to take that ownership and truly master the software and get Eric's book, study online, do some homework, practice, that you can be successful.
Right. That's that exception. But yeah, they have to have that simple business needs and that commitment.
We had a very complex one go live with virtually under $20,000, and they were very complex, but they knew it, they owned it, they did all the things. They took ownership of their system, right? Julia Baxter taught me this. Whose software? Not my software, your software. This is your system. You need to take responsibility for.
I love that.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to understand that Business Central may be in Microsoft's marketing department being sold as simple system for simple. That's the wrong. But you get my point. But it's really not. Business Central is a chameleon. You have so much configuration. You can turn it into anything. And the most successful Nav and Business Central stories, for that sake, are these companies who have, the weird business processes. Stuff is complicated, and we can make Business Central work for them. Those are all the success stories. The success story is not the mom and pop store who just sell and buy stuff and that's it. That's not the success story. The success story is that we have this chameleon piece of software that we can really make work for any type of complicated business. There's a word I really hate now is the word enterprise, because enterprise is strictly defined as some sort of size. But you can have a very, very simple business that just is big. But you can also have a small business that's really, really complex.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And from that aspect, I love redefining the word enterprise into being about complexity instead. And with that mindset, Business Central is really one of the few tools that can deliver, because the traditional competitors that we have cannot deliver because the flexibility is not there. It has been such a interesting journey to see all the GP people coming over to BC, because I did a seminar in Redmond, I guess 2.5 years ago, something like that. And I had a room full of GP people for 2 days, and we talked about development and the mindset of the people coming from GP channel was that, well, it's kind of an immature product, but I guess it's on the cloud and there's some development stuff, so we better learn it. But now, with the people I still talk with, almost some of them daily, is that they discover the depth of what the product can actually do, and I think that's that's the secret sauce, the gem that might be a bit hard to approach at some point, but it's such a powerful piece of software. But it's not designed for mom and pop store. It never was. Before Microsoft purchased it, what we call Nav and AX now were Navision and Axapta, and those two products were going head to head. They were competing products for the same customers. It was not one is enterprise and one is SMB. That's something Microsoft labels they slapped on the package, and of course that has almost 20 years that has passed has influenced the products greatly. But from a feature perspective, they started out at the same spot, competing for the same kind of customers, and they were not the small customers they were competing for.
It's great history there, and Eric, that's the core point for me as well. Is Business Central, Nav before it, right? Businesses with 3 and 4 users run it. Businesses with 250 or 500 users run it, right? It runs the gamut, and that means it's a complex software. It can be complex to implement it simply, right? You have to make a lot of quick choices. You have to go with the standards. And like Tom was saying, it can be done, but gosh, it's still the underlying functionality and feature set in there can be very complex and support a complex business.
You know, we were having a conversation. We had a conversation to Eric's point. I was talking with a prospect just the other day. They're making a switch from a mid-level system, and I, you know, where I tried to position it is I said, look, if you want to buy the last system that you're going to need while you own your company, Business Central's it.
Absolutely.
You may not need everything that we're capable of right now today, but based on the growth path that you're talking about, this is the horse that's going to take you to the finish line. You buy one of these other systems you're looking at, you're going to have to switch again in another 4 or 5 years.
You're right. I love that. I love sharing that thought, Tom, with customers. Like, this is your last system. You will never outgrow it. It will not outgrow you. You know, it will do whatever you need. You know, we like to say we can make it sing. If you know, one day we're going to make Business Central sing.
I did a video on that.
You know,
where you sang.
Yeah. You know, but you know, you could build an extension to make it sing. You know, if someone's willing to pay for it. So.
Well, just to put it in perspective, I had back in Denmark, and this is quite a few years ago, the world's biggest shipping company running on Nav with 3,500 users.
Wow, that's the largest I've ever heard. I've heard up to 2,000. So yeah. Wow.
Yeah. This was running on 2.6.
Yeah. Wow. So this brings up a great point,
We're doing an upgrade from 1.0 right now.
And now I don't remember who kind of keyed me into this, but I used to be fond of saying the great thing about Nav in that day was you can make it do anything, and the bad thing about Nav is you can make it do anything, right? So with Business Central, in the effort to make the ongoing maintenance and upgrades much more straightforward, much simpler, right? They've locked down a lot of the architecture and how code is adjusted. We touched on that already. Along with that, again, comes the ever-present pressure on a business to adapt their processes to the best practices and what's in the system and take advantage of the functions and features in the system and not demand that it matches their business exactly, which necessitates customizations and so forth. Are you guys seeing a transition to where the businesses, especially if they've got in their mindset it should be a fairly simple implementation, are you seeing a mind shift to adapting to the best practices that are embedded within the software?
Not really. We're seeing is a maturity in as users have become more familiar with software systems in general. I think that they acknowledge that some things, how I post a check, I should adapt my process. However I posted it before, I should just post my checks the way the system does it. But when you get into production or advanced distribution or some of the things that are truly strategic to that business, then they don't want to adapt, nor do we think they should adapt. It's to Eric's point from earlier. This is why you should buy this system, is because we can help leverage your strategic advantages with the software.
But we are doing that very differently now in Business Central on the cloud that we used to do on NAV.
Sure.
But the complexity of what we're creating with now it's called extension, but as customizations are just as complex as what we did in NAV, but it's different. It's done differently, and it's done in a way now that is resistant to the ever-changing base app. It's resistant to what other app, because if you create a customization on Monday, you need to be prepared that on Tuesday the customer will install some random app from AppSource, and that still has to work. So it's a whole different mindset, but it can be done. Mark and I are actually sharing a common customer, and with the recent, and this is they have tons of customization. The last time I counted, I think it was close to 35,000 lines of AL code we have created for them. The upgrade from 16 to 17 was 2 lines of code that has to be changed in our customization. But the mindset of how you do customizations now compared to how it's been done in NAV is totally changed. We have to accept the base app. We have to accept that this is the way it works. Don't try to bend it into something that it was not designed for. If you need special transactions, then you create them on the outside and have the special transaction create standard transactions so everything still works. But you can do just as complex customizations and add-ons and all that as you could with NAV, but it's just done in a very, very different way. Right.
And different's not bad. Different in this case is good.
Better.
Extensions are standing outside the base code. We're talking much better maintenance and upgrade path for people that are on pure extensions.
And Power App, right?
Yeah.
I mean, different.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I think that's touching on a very, very important part of this, that with NAV you were in the closed NAV bubble. That's where you might had a slight integration with Excel, but that was it. Now you're in the whatever Power Dynamics Microsoft bubble. So you have Power Apps, you have Power BI, you have Power Automate, you have the integration to Office, you have all these things suddenly, and you don't have to do everything as a customizations to your ERP system anymore. If they want to put in timesheets in a different way, well, we might just expose an API and then it's done through Power Apps or through something completely different, right? So we're part of something much bigger now. Also means that we don't have to do everything.
I mentioned the Microsoft stack earlier. That's a whole separate conversation, but the possibilities, it's so exciting in terms of what else you can do and what you can integrate with, what you can bring data in from to provide increased insights and make everybody those. And I can date myself because I'm in a good crowd here. An information worker, you remember that term from the 90s, right? I think we're finally starting to see some of that. But so I'm going to get to the nub here, and it's really interesting in this conversation. What I'm hearing is that there have been some changes, some adjustments over the past couple of years in terms of what your role is as a partner, what a partner does and how they work with a customer, So some adjustments, but I think the importance has not been diminished in any respect. And so I'm curious how you've seen that change. What's still the same? What's changed a little bit in terms of your role as a partner and how a customer should be working with you?
Well, for us, I think that it's about understanding the nature of the relationship, and not every customer, Innovia is not going to be a fit for every customer. And we want to just be really open with each other as we get to know each other and determine, you know, can we help you get where you're trying to go? And in some cases that answer is yes, and in some cases that answer is no. And that doesn't mean that we haven't helped some of these folks that wanted to self-implement, and they've been successful. But we've learned along the way how to help them be successful, or at least try to discern the folks that are willing to be self-aware enough to acknowledge that we told you when things don't go the way they hoped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would reiterate that it is very much dependent on the customer. The software, yes, you could self-implement. You better take full ownership of that and get in and grind and learn the software and look up and find all the resources you can. Most clients are still going to need some guidance on it. There's base tools and templates to make things easier, but you got to know what needs filled in, what boxes need checked. There's still a lot of knowledge that partners maintain to help set this thing up. It is not a little package. It is a very strong ERP package that has a lot of moving pieces. And that's where, I mean, going all the way back, setting expectations, you got to know what's phase one, what's phase two, what's phase three. And you want to have them all documented so you can get there and you can make it sing, but you got to take the right steps and get it, the foundation of the software working so that you can build on it and get to that next level.
But what have changed is actually, I can see that the lineup, the composition of resources, at least in our company, is much more focused on actually directly delivering values for the customer, because we have no technical people who goes out and installs a server or messes with a printer on all that stuff. That's has been cloudified, right? So the eFoqus lineup is very sharp. It's consultants who have, some are best at finance, some are best at inventory and whatever it is, and developers who are laser focused on AL code. That's it, and we don't need anybody else. We have no need for somebody who can install Windows 10, because we're never doing that anyway.
Right. No, very similar with us. We only have, our consultants are all senior consultants. Several of them have worked back at Navision, so they have, true hardcore, but then some of them, picked this up over the last 5 or 10 years. But where we, through my other experiences earlier on in the process, taking a GP consultant and making them a Business Central consultant was very unsuccessful. It was a different mindset. It was easier to take a business analyst out of college at 25 years old that knew how to use technology really well and teach them, how to develop, or take someone out of finance that knows finance, and accounting out of college, but wants to apply it to technology. That was an easier move than taking, redirecting resources. But, the coaching of the customer is still, there's a reason Microsoft has the customer have to buy the license from a partner. They know deep inside, even though they started this, Tom, you're absolutely right. Madeira, oh, it's $40. It's you click buy, try, whatever. You still had to buy it from a partner. There's a reason there's competencies coming out in spring, spring of next year. The complications of the solution and the potential of the solution is endless. And, to have a Business Central cloud competency program coming out and bringing that back into this space, I think is fantastic, where Microsoft is like, yeah, you do need credible people implementing these solutions. We can provide them the guides, the books, the videos and stuff, but without a support model in place, you're going to have an unhappy customer.
Just and last piece of history, and I think all of us were here. Maybe Ben came in at the very tail end, but they used to make us go to class. Like 8 or 10 people had to go to class for 11 days, a week and a half, just to sell this stuff. They wouldn't even let you sell it until you had really gotten some base level of knowledge. Now anybody that checks a box and fills in a form, it can be a reseller, and so there's an awful
less than that.
You don't have to check the box anymore.
to become an indirect CSP is basically just hand over a credit card number, and then you're indirect CSP.
Right, that's right.
And I got to say that burns a little bit under my skin. I get really concerned with that, right? I like all of us here, love the product, care about the product, care about our community. And when I hear that newer partners don't have the background and the experience, and sorry about that, and can get in the game pretty easily and then leave a trail of tears, as it were, and people that can't close their books at the end of the month, that scares me. And so part of the reason I wanted to have this chat today, it seems like, based on this conversation, based on what I'm hearing, it's as important, if not more so than ever, to have a partner that's got the experience, that knows how the software works, what are the options for it, and making sure that it's optimized to support the business properly, so the business can improve, can grow, and so forth. You guys agree with that statement? Oh,
absolutely. My favorite thing, though, is recovery projects from MSPs that thought they could sell it. So you flip that around.
You're building a service line out of this, so okay, that's good.
Or you flip it around and you become a strategic partner to an MSP, where, Eric, you don't want to do a Windows 10 server anymore, but someone does, and you find those partners and keep them out of it, and then you arm wrestle for some licensing revenue. But there's a reason, like, our name is Dynamic Consulting. It's not Dynamic Software. I mean, at the end of the day, we don't care really about, we love the software revenue, don't get me wrong, but it's a services, it's consulting, it's, and I think you're absolutely right. Having the right people, having the competency. There was a comment on Twitter last week, are people learning on, their first implementations? And that's really a scary thing, because one of us on this call will probably end up with that customer at some point.
I am shocked the size of the deals some of these people are taking down. I mean, somebody that's never sold this software, but we're helping a company right now. I mean, it's a huge company, and I don't know who made that purchase decision, but I bet they don't work there much longer.
Wow.
Because they bought it from somebody, MSP. I mean, it's an enormous implementation, and it's a mess.
So, gosh, we've been talking for quite a while. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. I'm going to pose a question that I want each one of you to send off with. And really, for those who are looking at Business Central, what is your top recommendation, top piece of advice that you'd like to give them? Ben, let's start with you.
Take your time. So everything out there is try to implement it as fast as possible. Hit that 1/1 date. I mean, people time gate themselves and don't give themselves time to learn it and test it and work through the processes. take your time with it. It's a big piece of software. Work with the right people and do it right.
Yeah, perfect. Standard. David.
Yeah, I'll build to that. I think it's an absolute must that time and do realize you need to have both a time investment and a financial investment. There are ways to strategically phase it. You don't have to bring in payroll from day one, even though you're using it in QuickBooks today. You can keep Intuit payroll going if let's focus on getting distribution ready. Let's look at those phases, and just because you're doing things manually today doesn't mean you have to automatically implement that as part of the process today also. So I think have realistic views of both time, budget, and total process investment.
I wrote a blog post touching on that, David, I don't know, a few months back, really looking at it as a strategic investment that you expect an ROI out of, and how are you going to achieve that ROI, and where's that going to come from, and really having that perspective, and that you're investing because this is going to provide you capabilities and a return in your business. And I think that's a different mind shift than historical IT investments. So, absolutely. Eric.
Well, I think I'm gonna leave you guys with or not you guys, but with a very simple advice that now that this is a cloud-based system, we have a piece of the system is called the admin center, which is where you as a customer controls the environments. That's the new word for databases, but the environments you have, user access, and what is updated when, update windows, and this is where you manage. The advantage of having a cloud system where you just go into the admin center and you control your system. And I have seen a lot of the people that, like David, we get failed implementations from other partners, and one of the first thing I do is showing them the admin center, saying, wow, we didn't realize that. You can create a copy of your production environment as a sandbox and play around with it without destroying anything and stuff like that. So very, very hands-on advice here. Make sure that you check out the admin center, because that's really one of the cool thing about suddenly having a cloud-based system like this.
Yeah. Great point. Tom.
I would say, do yourself a favor, get a partner, and make sure that you check references. And we think the most important standard is ask yourself, would you want to go get a beer with these folks? Because the right partners are the kind of people that are going to be able to be a real, you're going to have a close relationship. You're going to get better advice. And, would you want to go have a beer with these guys?
Mm-hmm. That is due diligence I can get behind. Great idea. All right, guys, we could probably go on for a few hours. I hope we can get together and talk about more around Business Central, maybe a couple different topics again. So I hope you enjoyed it as well. Thank you so very much for taking the time, and a lot of great advice to unpack through all of that. Thank you very much, guys.
Take care. Have a good day, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.